We come now to the last verse of Daniel's prophecy, Daniel chapter 9, verse 27. So I know this has taken a long time. I know it's been a lot of detail if you've suffered through the first three videos, but we've reached the end. So now we have some important things to consider. We have three key questions to consider in Daniel 9:27. Question 1, who is the mysterious he in Daniel 9:27? And the verse is on the screen so you can look at it and ponder with me as I go through the last two questions. With whom and for how long does this guy make a covenant? Whoever he is, with whom and for how long does he make a covenant? Number 3, how does the prophecy end? Will these 6 items from Daniel 9:24 actually happen? Because we left in Daniel 9:26, didn't look so good, very dark, very morbid, very depressing. So we are going to talk about each of these questions in turn. The first and the most difficult, it's actually not difficult, but it's become difficult because of alternative interpretations. Who is the mysterious guy in Daniel 9, verse 27? So the Bible says this, and I've highlighted he, the two he's there, so we know what we're talking about. And he will confirm a covenant with the many for 1 week, but in the middle of the week, he will put will put a stop to sacrifice and grain offering, and on the wing of abominations will come the one who makes desolate until a complete destruction, one that is decreed, gushes forth on the one who makes desolate. So we need to figure out who this person is. Who is the he who will confirm a covenant with the many for 1 week? Daniel doesn't use a name. He just says he. And when you see the pronoun he, it means it's referring to someone who is just named recently, right? If I say, Fred just walked across the street, he looks like he's hurt because he's limping. I don't have to use Fred the second time. I just mentioned him. I use a pronoun he, and you know the he is referring to Fred because I just named him. I don't need to name him a second time. We do that. We don't think about it. If you're an English nerd and you want to talk about, antecedents to pronouns, we can do that. Actually, we can't because I'm not going to do that. But that's how we figure out who the he is, or any pronoun. What's it refer back? Who's the person who was just mentioned? So we need to look back and identify the last notable person whom Gabriel mentioned to Daniel in Daniel 9:26. Who is the last person who is mentioned in Daniel 9:26? If you look there, you will see the last person mentioned is the people of the prince who is to come. That's who Gabriel last mentioned. It can't be the people because we're talking about one guy in Daniel 9:27. So the one guy mentioned in Daniel 9:26 is this prince, or this leader of this people of the leader who is to come. Who is this leader who is to come? So whoever this guy is, and when you read Daniel 9:27, he does not seem very friendly. Some people disagree. I'll talk about that in a second. So he does a few things. Number 1, he confirms a covenant of some sort for 1/7, which is the 70th in this vision. Number 2, he stops the sacrifices and grain offerings. We'll get to that when we get to it. 3, he ushers in some sinister abomination that destroys or desecrates some sacred space. And number 4, he himself is then destroyed. So who is this strange guy who does all this? Who is the he? Many really good Bible teachers have suggested many options. There are so many options throughout this whole prophecy. You could spend a long time pondering it. I could talk for a long time, but I'm not going to because I have a life and so do you. So I will focus on 3 common possibilities, one of which we can just dismiss immediately. Option 1, the guy in Daniel 9:27 is the Roman general Titus, who is mentioned in Daniel 9:26. He's the guy in Daniel 9:26 who Gabriel said in that verse would destroy the temple and Jerusalem, and who did in 70 AD. So these people would say, well, in Daniel 9:27, we're still talking about the destruction of the temple in 70 AD. It's the same subject. We're still talking about that. So it's Titus. Option 2, the guy is Jesus. So the guy is good in Daniel 9:27. Option 3, the guy is the Antichrist, the evil ruler who we are told many times who's going to show up. We're told that in 2 Thessalonians 2. We're told that in Revelation 13. So we can dismiss option 1 right away. Just take it, throw it into the rubbish bin, the trash can, throw it away. The 6-item summary of the prophecy in Daniel 9:24 ends with paradise regained. It ends with everything being good. If we take option 1, Daniel's prophecy ends with Jerusalem being destroyed and destruction reigning everywhere, and that's it. That leaves us stranded kind of at halftime with no resolution, no eternal righteousness, no removal of sin, no closure, no nothing. It doesn't do what Daniel 9:24 said the prophecy was about. So this option 1 does not work. It's wrong. Right? The 6-item list is still left unfulfilled, which means option 1 is garbage. Throw it away. Really good people have believed it. John Gill, I tremble to hesitate. I trembled. I need coffee. I tremble to disagree with the great Baptist theologian and pastor John Gill, but in this case, he's wrong. I don't know what to say. Option 2 is much more interesting. Option 2 is that the guy in Daniel 9:27 is Jesus and he's nice. Daniel 9:27 is not bad, it's good. That's option 2. This is how the argument goes. I'm going to present my best case for their argument. I'm taking this from Edward Young, the really good guy I mentioned in the last video, the really good Bible scholar, Old Testament scholar, wrote a really good book about interpreting Daniel. He's wrong with this whole prophecy, but it's a really good book, a lot of really good insights. I've used a lot of them for this video series. So this is the argument, and he represents what a lot of folks do. Jesus establishes or reaffirms, some would say, the covenant with his church, the new covenant in Christ's blood, the new covenant that all the prophets said would come. Ezekiel 36, Jeremiah 31, the new covenant that was promised, that's the covenant in Daniel 9:27, the argument goes. He establishes true religion, and he makes a covenant that was promised, and here's Jesus making the covenant. So Jesus puts a stop to sacrifice and grain offering because the old covenant system is gone. It's passed away. It has become obsolete, just like Hebrews chapter 8 said. And didn't, at his crucifixion at the moment he died, didn't the temple veil, wasn't it ripped in two to signify that system is now gone? Because the new covenant is here, based on better promises, with a better mediator and a better atonement. And following on from that great event, the abominations that are going to, the abomination that desecrates and defiles are the Romans, who profane the temple sanctuary by destroying it in 70 AD, and with other provocations along the way. And these same good Bible-believing Christians also believe the he in Daniel 9:27 cannot be the Antichrist. Right? It can't be him. Why? They say, or Edward Young says, it is the people of the prince who is to come who are going to destroy the temple and its sanctuary. And we know that happened in 70 AD. That is who destroys the temple. That is who brings this abomination of desolation in AD 70, in Daniel 9:27. So the people who did this belonged to a particular prince or a leader, and that leader was the Roman general Titus. So that whole discussion was over by the end of Daniel 9:26, and this is about a different guy, a guy like Jesus the Messiah. So this is not the best way to understand the passage. Option 3 is the best way, and option 3 says this guy in Daniel 9:27 is the Antichrist. And I'm going to give you, how many am I going to give you? I'm going to give you 3 good reasons why. Number 1, the guy at Daniel 9:27 seems very unfriendly. He doesn't seem good. He seems kind of bad. Number 2, the length of this 70th 7 needs to match the other 69. Right? It needs to work. It needs to be 7 years because it's one set of 7, just like the other 69 sevens were sets of 7s. Third, the last guy Gabriel mentioned was the coming leader whose people will destroy the temple. The Roman general Titus from Daniel 9:26 foreshadows the evil Antichrist to come, who will desecrate Jerusalem in the last days. So one at a time. First, this guy from Daniel 9:27 does not seem nice, but Jesus is nice. And many, not all, English Bible versions agree. And Daniel 9:27, this portion is translated differently depending on what Bible translation you have. Not because it's evil or sinister, or there's wicked people behind the scenes cackling in a basement somewhere, but because they understand the wow conjunction differently. So the little chart on your screen will show you the difference. Like the New American Standard, which I will use as a representative for my position, says, he'll make a covenant with the many for 1 week, but in the middle of the week, he'll put a stop to sacrifice and grain offering. Like, it's bad. Like, he does this, and then, or but, there's something bad that happens, a dark turn. The option 2, a different way to understand the conjunction there, is represented by the English Standard Version and some others that you can see on the chart. They say he's going to make a covenant with the many for 1 week, and for half the week, he'll put an end to sacrifice and offering. They don't interpret it as being a dark turn. They just say, hey, and the next thing is he'll do that. So they just say and, which is good. You can do that. Context has to decide what is happening with this conjunction, what's being communicated. And context has to tell you that. There's no right or wrong answer in this case. So the two emphases are really different. But it's enough for you to know that many good Bible translations understand Daniel 9:27 to be describing something bad. This is not a good guy. I don't think he's a good guy. So there it is. That's point number 1. In many good Bible translations, New American Standard, New Living Translation, New King James, the Net Bible, the Christian Standard Bible, it's the Southern Baptist sponsored translation, they agree. So those are some good folks to have on your side. Number 2, the length of this 70th 7 ought to match those of the other 69 sevens. So if this is Jesus in Daniel 9:27, does that mean his covenant only lasts for 7 years? Is that what it means? Because that's what it would have to mean. If we make the 70th 7 last as long as the other 69 sevens did each. But if you think the numbers are just symbolic, then it doesn't matter, and you can try and make it work, the way Cinderella's stepsister tried to make her foot fit into the glass slipper. But just like them, it really doesn't fit, and it's clear it doesn't fit. Just like it was clear to the Grand Duke, it didn't fit on the stepsister's foot. The symbolic thing doesn't work here. We already found out in video 2, I think it was video 2, that the sevens are, each 7 is a set of 7 years. That's the way the dating shakes out. That's what works. That's what it is. So the 70th one needs to be 7 years as well. But the Messiah's new covenant has lasted a bit longer than 7 years. It's still in effect right now. So if this last and 70th 7 is just a symbolic number, then why does God specifically say this person will abolish the sacrificial system in the middle of the week? It's kind of weird to just say, the numbers don't mean anything, but in the middle of the time span that you don't need to take seriously, he's going to stop the sacrifice and grain offering thing. It seems like we should take this 7 as an actual time unit that we can know and figure out. Christians who take the symbolic approach really struggle to make this last 7 mean anything that makes any sense. One really good Bible teacher from the 19th century, a Presbyterian guy named Albert Barnes, said that this problem was, quote, the most embarrassing portion of the prophecy because he didn't know how to make it make sense. So here, there's no crazy figurative, apocalyptic imagery. There's no crazy beasts with heads and horns. There's no flying scrolls. There's no women in pots. There's no storks carrying a wicked woman who's in a pot off to the east. That stuff you find in Daniel chapter 2, Daniel chapter 7, Zechariah 5, the scroll, the woman in the pot, the stork, Zechariah 5. None of that's happening here. And there's nothing here that's suggesting this is figurative language. When you read about a vision where a guy sees a woman who represents sin being smashed into a pot with the lid fastened on and storks take her and carry her far away, when you read that in Zechariah 5, you know that it isn't painting reality in normal colors. We know that, right? But that's not what's happening here. This is very straightforward language. There's no figurative, crazy, otherworldly stuff going on here. This is normal language. This suggests we ought to understand the words in Daniel 9:27 in a normal, straightforward way, which means we ought to interpret the sevens consistently throughout this whole passage. We've already seen the interpretation that understands 1 7 equals 1 set of 7 years makes the best sense of the evidence. So this 70th 7 ought also to be understood as a period of 7 years. This suggests that this evil leader, the Antichrist, will establish a covenant that lasts 7 years, the 70th 7. John, going back to the point about, if the numbers are just symbolic, that means the Messiah's new covenant only lasts for 7 years? What is that? John Gill, who I love, who's the OG Baptist interpreter dude, Agreed? He said, well, that can't be right because the Messiah's reign is not for 1 week, it's forever. Amen to that. So the symbolic thing doesn't work. It's got to be 7 years. It means it can't be Jesus. It must be a different guy. It must be a bad guy who we're told about elsewhere. Third, which leads me to my last point, the last guy Gabriel mentioned in Daniel 9:26 was a coming evil ruler whose people will destroy the temple. So the Antichrist sounds like our guy. Like I mentioned, the way language works is when you see a pronoun, he, she, it, whatever, and it doesn't name the person, you just have a pronoun, like the mysterious he in Daniel 9:27, you identify who they're talking about by 2 ways. Number one, you look back to find the most recent name that was mentioned, and it's probably talking about that guy, or you look back at the most prominent name that's the subject of the last paragraph or section before the pronoun is there. In this case, the most recent and prominent person is the prince who is to come, whose people will destroy Jerusalem and the sanctuary. And there are really clear Bible passages that tell us that a dark and sinister figure will emerge in the last days who will demand divine worship and persecute God's people. This man of lawlessness will only be destroyed when Jesus returns. 2 Thessalonians 2, Revelation 13, and also Matthew 24, 15 to 31, and 1 Thessalonians 4, 13 to 17 is supporting things. We did a Wednesday night Bible study on 2 Thessalonians 2 that I will link in the description thing below, and you can watch that at your leisure if you want. But that's really clear. That guy is real. He is going to show up. When is he going to show up? Well, it's almost as though one author is behind the whole Bible, and it seems like we're talking about the same guy here. Because we know to expect this evil man, it makes sense to see him foretold in our passage here, which is why Jesus explicitly references Daniel 9:27 in his big Olivet discourse in Matthew 24 and tells us to pay close attention to this very prophecy when he was talking about the last days. So, as I mentioned, some Bible teachers say, well, this prince or leader in Daniel 9:26 is clearly Titus, so we cannot be talking about the Antichrist here in Daniel 9:27. So I want to talk about the foreshadowing thing. Titus is the guy in 9:26, but I believe he simply is foreshadowing the evil Antichrist who will do his best to desecrate and destroy Jerusalem in the last days. Now, I mentioned before, Edward Young, the great, really good Old Testament interpreter, wrote a great book on Daniel. He talked about the Roman Empire depicted by the fourth beast in Daniel 7 as existing in 3 phases. Phase 1, the original Roman Empire under whose jurisdiction Jesus and Pontius Pilate lived. Phase 2, sometime after Jesus' day, this empire will splinter into a remnant of many, which is represented by the 10 horns of this weird beast in Daniel 7, verses 23 and 24. And phase 3 is a powerful king who will arise from amongst the splintered bits of phase 2, and that's in Daniel 7, 24 and 26. And it's this third phase which the Antichrist represents as the leader of the people who is to come. Jesus himself, when in his great, end times discussion in Matthew 24, especially verses 15 to 28, seems to shade both events together and weave them together, where he's talking about 2 things at once. He's talking about the destruction of the city and the temple in 70 AD, and at the same time, also referring to the Antichrist's reign of terror during the last days. Trustworthy Bible scholars and teachers of every stripe recognize this. Take any study Bible you have that's good, that's not written or put out by quacks. And if you look at Matthew 24, they will probably say, seems like he's talking about 2 things at once. Just as David's life and his standing, his position is a shadowy reflection that points to Jesus who is to come. So in this particular case, Titus's station and what he does in AD 70 is a shadowy reflection that points to what the Antichrist will do in the last days. So what I'm saying is, number 1, Titus does not exhaust the meaning of the prince or leader who is to come in Daniel 9:26. And number 2, the Antichrist is just as much a leader of Rome as Titus. He just operates in a different phase, in phase 3 of that pagan kingdom. So now we go to the question 2. So this guy, the Antichrist, is going to make a covenant with the many for 1 week or 1/7. With whom and for how long will this covenant be made? Who are the many with whom this evil ruler will make the covenant? Gabriel does not tell us who they are. If you believe the he in Daniel 9:27 is Jesus, that means Daniel 9:27 is about a lot of good stuff, which means the many are believers in the new covenant in Christ's blood. But we've seen that is not the best interpretation, so we're going to set that aside. All respect and love to Edward Young and those who follow him and his tradition. Instead, the Antichrist, not Jesus, will make a covenant with someone. There are 2 good options for who this could be. Option 1. Gabriel told us at the beginning that the prophecy was for your people and your holy city. He said that in Daniel 9:24. So we might assume that the many are the people of Israel, the nation. That's who the many are. That's option 1. Option 2 is that the many with whom the Antichrist makes a covenant are his followers. The Antichrist comes to power, he makes a covenant with people who join with him, pledge themselves to him. So these are unsaved people who desire, or maybe they're coerced, terrified, to ally themselves to the Antichrist in some crude imitation of Jesus' coming kingdom. That one does make sense. It's a good option. But I think option 1, the Jewish people, the Jewish, also for other people, but I mean, it's the Jewish people I think is the correct answer in option number 1. Like Gabriel said, the prophecy was for your people and your holy city. So I think it's the Israeli people who are the focus of the prophecy. The Antichrist's actions seem to be against the people who he makes the covenant with. They're the ones that he moves against in the middle of the week when he stops the sacrifice and the grain offering. He makes a covenant and then he seems to take a dark turn against the same people with whom he made the covenant. So it doesn't seem to make sense that the Antichrist would attack and persecute the unbelievers who have joined themselves to him. It doesn't make much sense. Other passages strongly suggest there will be a period of approximately 7 years during which the Antichrist specifically persecutes Israel. Revelation 11, Revelation 13. And especially Revelation 11, the book of Revelation paints those events in a dramatically figurative way with a strong Jewish flavor that would take a lot of effort to get around. So it seems best to understand that the Antichrist is going to make a covenant of some kind with the people of Israel. We don't know what it's going to be about. Some people speculate they're pulling that out of somewhere. We don't know what the covenant's going to be about. We just know, we don't know if it's voluntary. We don't know if it's coerced. We don't know anything. It may not be voluntary. The word that's used there could give the sense of some evil ruler forcing it on the basis of superior strength. I'm recording this in early 2025, 2026. If Russia does prevail in its war against Ukraine and there's a peace deal signed, you could say that Ukraine makes a covenant with Russia, but I don't think it's really voluntary. You know what I'm saying? So this may not be a voluntary covenant. So we already learned that each 7 is a unit of 7 years. And the first 69 sevens work when we interpret it that way. So it's reasonable to believe that this 70th 7 is also 1 unit of 7 years. And this 70th 7 is the last event in Gabriel's timeline. And so the scriptures often give hints of a terrible period of great tribulation. Those are Jesus's words in Matthew 24. During the last days, lasting for approximately 7 years. Revelation 11, 1-13 speaks of 2 special, powerful witnesses for Jesus. They go about Jerusalem for 1,260 days, which is 42 months, or about 3.5 years. They preach and they do miracles before a ferocious and sinister and evil creature kills them both. The Antichrist, who's empowered by a dragon who represents Satan. This Antichrist, beast, crazy, weird figure dude then is going to rule in a cruel and evil manner for 42 months, which is about 3.5 years. Revelation 13, 1-10 tells us this. It's very figurative imagery, apocalyptic, crazy images going on, but that much that I've said is summarized is very clear. And combined, this is a total of about 7 years, which Daniel hints here in our passage in Daniel 9:27 is characterized by number 1, 1/2 or 3.5 years of relative peace, but impending danger, storm clouds gathering sort of thing. And then the last half, 3.5 years of abject evil. So, one last thing to cover before we move to the third and final question in this great prophecy is that in Daniel 9:27, we're told that in the midst or the middle of the covenant that lasts 7 years, the Antichrist will, quote, put an end to sacrifice and grain offering. So, what exactly is going to be happening here? So, we talked about with whom, we talked about for how long, but what is happening here? So, on face value, this makes no sense unless there is a temple complete with relaunched Old Covenant sacrificial system in Jerusalem at which the Antichrist could put a stop to. So many Christians in America believe it must mean that there will be a new temple, it'll be in Jerusalem, it'll be up and running, active, Mosaic covenant sort of reinstituted and rolling before the millennial reign. So sometime before Jesus returns. If that is true, there must first occur a series of events so cataclysmic and world altering that they seem really, really implausible today. At least three, just off the cuff. Number one, the modern state of Israel would have to completely change its character and become a Jewish nationalist, conservative Jewish nationalist state. And that would be a really big deal. To put it mildly, modern Israel is a secular country. That would have to change in a big way. Number two, maybe most crazily, Israel, in order for a temple to be in effect running and operating, Israel would have to expel all Muslim structures and worshippers from the Temple Mount site in Jerusalem. The Dome of the Rock, the mosque, the mosque would have to be destroyed, demolished. A temple would have to be built on the original site. This is almost too fantastic to believe. It would have to probably be a miracle if it were to happen. But that's what must happen if we are to believe that there will be an actual temple up and running with the old covenant sacrifices reinstituted at which the Antichrist can work his evil deeds. Number three, Israel would have to have sufficient military and economic resources to pull this off in the face of determined opposition. Many, 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 many political stars would have to align if that were ever going to happen. So, with God, all things are possible. God can do this if he wants. Many Christians believe that he will. That is why Christians of a certain stripe, they and the Bible teachers who represent their movement will always have watched Israel and Middle East politics very, very closely. Unfortunately, some of these teachers make really absurd and dumb speculations and are really poor ambassadors for their position and for Christianity. They say stupid things, they write stupid books, and they look like quacks. Not all, some, too many. And it's not just me that says that. A dispensationalist scholar, a great scholar from Dallas Seminary named Michael Spiegel, wrote exactly that in the opening pages of his book, The Fathers on the Future. It's not me, just me mean that says that. So it could happen. God can do anything he wants. Some Christians of a certain stripe spend way too much time speculating and speculate way too much and make fools of themselves and the Lord whom they represent. They're quacks, some of them, too many. But Daniel does not necessarily mean there will be another temple operating in Jerusalem, complete with a restoration of the sacrificial system. We don't have to read Daniel 9:27 that way about he'll make the sacrifice and grain offering stop. Doesn't have to mean there's a new temple up and running and rolling. It could only mean that worship in general, worship of God, will be abolished. And Gabriel just explains this to Daniel using Old Covenant language. That's possible. It's kind of a stretch, but that's the way that some really good Bible teachers who take my view understand what's being said. But regardless, the Antichrist will forcibly stop believers from worshiping the one true God. He will stop the Jewish people from worshiping the Jewish people with whom he made the covenant that's going to eventually just last 7 years. He's going to forcibly stop them from worshiping the one true God. That's what's going to happen. So how does this prophecy end? The Antichrist, two things are going to happen to the Antichrist. We read, on the wing of abominations will come the one who makes desolate. A lot of Hebrew commentators, scholars, Bible teachers spend a lot of time talking about the Hebrew and trying to parse out, what exactly is being described. I'm not going to do that for you here or delve into that. I'm just going to say the picture you get, which I think is probably best, is this imagery of this overspreading shadow of darkness and evil, this wing of abominations. Just picture this shadow of darkness creeping over the land. You know, the Antichrist, this is evil spreading over the land. Like there's this great opening scene, I think it's in the Fellowship of the Rings, where darkness spreads over the map of Middle Earth. It's the evil Sauron is influence is spread. That idea, of darkness spreading over the land. And the Antichrist makes Jerusalem desolate because he's outlawed all worship of the true God. It's a time of immense and horrible persecution, worse than ever has been or ever will be, Jesus says in Matthew 24, I think 24, 21. And that's what's happening. The Apostle Paul tells us the Antichrist opposes and exalts himself above every so-called God or object of worship, so that he takes his seat in the temple of God, displaying himself as being God. So there's another, that's what Paul says the Antichrist is going to do. That seems to be what fits here, this desecration of God's house. And Paul talks about him taking his seat in the temple of God. So there's another brick in the wall, so to speak, toward there being there being a temple there, but for the Antichrist to do these things at. And Daniel continues, this is going to happen, quote, until a complete destruction, one that is decreed, gushes forth on the one who makes desolate. So this darkness will spread across the whole world until the Antichrist himself is destroyed. This tells us the Antichrist will be destroyed in accordance with a decision God made long ago. One that is decreed gushes forth on the one who makes desolate. He himself will be faced with a complete destruction, one that is decreed. To leave Daniel for a moment, where do we see in the Bible that an evil figure will set himself up, demand to be worshipped as though he is the Lord? And you can read about that in Revelation 11 and 13 specifically, and 2 Thessalonians 2. He's going to do this and bring an overwhelming scourge of destruction and darkness upon the earth until he himself is destroyed, just as it has been decreed. When is the Antichrist destroyed and his evil kingdom toppled? Well, Babylon, the evil kingdom, is destroyed in Revelation 18. And in Revelation 19, Jesus returns. In Revelation 19:20, we learn that when Jesus returns, quote, the beast was seized, and with him the false prophet who performed the signs in his presence, by which he deceived those who had received the mark of the beast. That's in Revelation 13. And those who worshipped his image. These two were thrown alive into the lake of fire, which burns with brimstone. So that is when the Antichrist is destroyed in Revelation 19. So that is what's being depicted here in light of what the entire Bible says. And once the Messiah returns, this is the second coming, and he casts the Antichrist and the false prophet into the lake of fire and locks Satan away into the abyss. That's Revelation 20, verses 1 through 4, after Jesus comes back. Righteousness will reign, and all the promises of Daniel 9:24 will come true. The 77s end in light of the whole of Revelation that we now have, end with Christ inaugurating his 1,000-year kingdom reign on earth. Some really good Christians don't believe Jesus will come back before his millennial reign to trigger his 1,000-year millennial reign. That's a controversy for other videos at other times. I'm just saying, on my interpretation, we end Daniel 9:27 with the Antichrist destroyed. Where do we see the Antichrist destroyed? In Revelation 19, just after, the chapter after, Satan's kingdom is annihilated. And what happens after Antichrist is destroyed? Satan is locked away for 1,000 years, and righteousness and peace and goodness rules the land, and the curse on the land is reversed. And immediately after, to give a little hint, read Revelation 20, 21, and 22 for yourself. Just read it. It's encouraging. Immediately after this millennium, when the 1,000 years are completed, Revelation chapter 20, verse 7 says, Satan will be released from prison. He'll lead a short rebellion against Jesus' kingdom, at which point God from on high will vaporize Satan Satan's armies with a fireball from on high. Best way to describe it, read Revelation 20, verses 7 to 10. These are fantastic visions meant to get across a point. People can have different agreements and understandings, and do, about what exactly is going to be happening. But the big point, Satan will be released. He'll lead a rebellion against Jesus. He will lose quickly, violently, and badly, and totally. Revelation 20, verses 7 to 10. And that is where things will end. That is the end of our prophecy. The prophecy ends with this evil, sinister figure being wiped out. So then, in light of the rest of the Bible story, which we now have, which Jesus told us about, which Jesus told us to read in Matthew 24, we have, as you look at the graphic on the screen, all 6 things that are promised in Daniel 9:24. All 6 things are done and dusted and accomplished by the end, after the Antichrist is destroyed. Transgression is finished. Make an end of sin. Make a final, perfect, once-for-all atonement for guilt. Bring in everlasting righteousness in the new heavens and new earth and paradise to come. Seal up vision and prophecy, because we will all be his people. We will see his face, and he'll dwell among us. Emmanuel, for real, for real, for real. And he will anoint a most holy person, that is Jesus, who's ruling as king now as he's orchestrating his divine war against the forces of darkness, and who will really, truly, fully rule and reign on a new heavens and a new earth, here in a physical place, with us in bodily physical form, where we can be with him and worship him forever. This prophecy, when paired with the rest of Revelation that we now have, this prophecy gives us the sort of God's divine 77 or 70-week timetable, the end of which all the good promises have been accomplished. All of the covenant promises are done. Paradise was made, paradise was lost. Paradise, by the end of the 77s, and in Revelation 21 and 22, has been regained. Hallelujah. Praise the Lord. If you haven't joined his family, you should join him. And there's a link in the description about the gospel and a video about the real story of Jesus that you might be in, that I beg you to watch, so you can know about Jesus and what he came to do, who he is, and how you can be a part of his family in the new world to come.